Now, in order to store these values up into the JSON object, let's go ahead and write in some code. So the way in which we are going to store these values into the cart is we are not actually going to go ahead and simply assign cart equals item ID, because what that would actually do is that would simply override if we go ahead and add a new value in here. So instead of doing that, we are actually going to go ahead and save the values inside the cart in a key value pair. So what I exactly mean by that? So the cart which we are creating here is a JSON object. It sort of functions like an array, which means that we have a specific index for a cart. So which means in order to store the item in the cart variable right here, we actually need to go ahead and type in cart, and then we can assign an index value to this particular cart. So I can say cart of 0, and I can save some value in here like 1. I can say cart of, let's say, 3, and I can save some value in here as 6. So the way in which we are going to store values in a cart is that we are not going to store IDs in here. Instead, we are actually going to treat this index values or the key values as the item ID. So for example, if I want to store the item ID 1, I can simply go ahead and type in cart of 1 here. And then this 1 or any value over here is going to represent the amount of items whose ID is 1. So let's say, for example, we are storing the watch variable or the watch product in here. So the ID of our watch is 1. So in order to save our watch, I'll simply say cart of 1, which means we want to save watch, and I'll equate this to the quantity. So let's say if I want 2 watches, I'll assign this thing a value of 2. So if I want to store a bike, I can say cart, and then the ID for the bike is actually 3. So I can say cart of 3 equals, and let's say if I only want a single bike. So this is the manner, or this is the way in which we'll be storing the objects inside our cart. So in here, instead of these values, I can simply go ahead and use item ID, because this value over here is nothing but the item ID which we just got from here. So now I hope you guys understood the way in which we are going to store values inside this particular JSON object. Okay, so now let's implement this in practice. So first of all, we actually want to check if a particular item is present in the cart. So let's say if you want to check if the watch is present in the cart, I can simply type in if cart, and I can say the ID has 1 because 1 is actually the ID for our watch. So if I say if this is not equal to undefined, which means that the watch is actually present in the cart. So if the watch was not present, this would actually turn out to be false. So if the cart is not undefined, means it's actually defined, and if it's defined, which means that we already have that watch in our cart. So in that case, what I want to do is that I simply want to increment the value of watch over here, or the quantity of watch over here, by 1. So in order to access the quantity of our watch, I can simply type in cart of 1, and I'll type cart of 1 equals cart of 1 plus 1, because obviously I want to increment the value of my watch. Now over here, we are not actually talking about watch, but we are talking about all the products. So instead of this 1 value in here, I can simply go ahead and use item ID. So I hope these things are making sense now. So this actually means that if a particular item is actually present in your cart, then you go ahead and simply increment its value by 1, because we obviously want our site to work in that fashion. So let's say if I already have this particular item inside a cart, I don't want to add this item one more time. Instead, I just want to go ahead and increment the quantity of that particular item. So this is what exactly our code does. It takes that particular value, which is the quantity, and it increments that quantity by 1. So I hope this thing makes sense. Else, and in the else part, we are going to write in the code, which means that the item has never been added to the cart. So this is the first time we are adding that item into the cart. So in that case, what we simply wish to do is that we simply wish to make the value or make the quantity of that item equal to 1. So I'll type in cart item ID equals 1. So this simply means that if I go ahead and if I click on this button, and if the watch was not actually present inside the cart, I simply want to make watch quantity equal to 1. So I hope these things actually make sense. So now once we know how this thing works, let's actually go ahead and try to print out this particular cart right here. So now if I go ahead and type in console.log and cart, that will actually print my cart on the console. So now if I go ahead and go to the browser, hit refresh, if I click on add to cart, as you can see, we get 1 over here. So this specific 1 means the ID of the product which we have just added. So we have just added the watch over here, and hence we got the value as 1. And this 1 over here means the quantity of that particular item, which is watch. So when I go ahead and click this button one more time, as you can see, now the quantity has increased to 2. Now let's see what happens when we click on the laptops add to cart button. So when I click that, as you can see, we have second object added up over here, which is laptop, whose ID is 2, but the quantity of laptops which we have in our cart are only 1. So when I click that one more time, now its quantity becomes 2. When I click this one more time, the quantity of laptop actually becomes 3, but the quantity of watch still remains 2 right over here, which means that now we are able to actually print out our cart. Now once we are able to do that, now let's go ahead and actually learn how to save this cart inside our local storage. So remember, this cart value or this cart variable is actually the JavaScript JSON variable which we have just created over here. But now we also need to make sure that we save this particular cart inside a local storage. Because what would happen is that if I go ahead and just hit refresh, and if I again click on this button right here, as you can see, my cart is now absolutely cleared. That is, whatever items which I had added previously are now vanished. So in order to avoid this, we go ahead and make sure that we save this cart value into our local storage cart. So saving that is pretty much simple. I can simply type in local storage.set item, and then we set the value for cart, and we are going to set the value of cart over here. But even before we actually assign that value directly over here, we need to use the json.stringify method, which will actually convert that value into a string. So I'll type in json.stringify, and only then I'll go ahead and pass this cart value in here. So simply copy that and paste that thing up over here. So now let's end this with semicolon, and now we are good to go. And now let's see how this thing works out. So I'll go ahead, hit refresh. So I'll add this. So these items are added. I'll add a laptop as well. And now if I go ahead and hit refresh, and now if I go ahead and try to add this bike, as you can see, the bike is added, as well as the items which we had previously are also now retained, because we are actually saving all of this cart into our local storage. So that's it for this lecture, and I hope you guys were able to understand how we have designed this particular add to cart functionality. The functionality is not actually complete yet, but we are actually done with the groundwork which is associated with creating a cart. So in the next lecture, what we will do is that we will actually try to display the number of items in our cart into some navigation bar over here. So in the next lecture, we will add a nav bar in here, and we'll try to display the value of our cart items in that particular navigation bar. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.